All right, we will call the meeting to order, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone, this evening. Roll call, Mr. Lundberg?
Ohm.
Yes.
Odie.
Yes.
Saxer.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Bell.
Yes.
All right, if there are no questions or changes that need to be made to the agenda, I would entertain a motion to approve that as presented, please.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Conflict of interest or disclosure waiver request, I don't believe we have any of those tonight. That takes us to approval of the minutes from our regular meetings on April 11th and April 24th. If there are no questions on those, I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented.
So move.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Community input, I don't believe there is any this evening. That takes us to our financial items. Mr. Lundberg.
Okay, the bills were presented in your board packet. I just had a couple of them to note. The first one on page 5, Gil Haugen, $581,899, brings a total to date, paid to date of $7,340,000 of a total contract of $8,878,000, so 83% paid. And I did want to note, as of today, or as of right now, that total project has change orders of $43,000, which is very good on a remodel or addition. That's a very low number. The only other one on page 9 and 10 I had was Teachwell Solutions, our quarterly payments for all of our services at Teachwell totaled up to about $280,000. $1,577,655 total bills and claims. The pay voucher, or the advance payments of $4,863 were itemized, and then we had pay vouchers of $102,000. Substitute teacher pay, as you can see by that listing of pay vouchers, is really ramped up in the last couple months. Lastly, food service bills of $160,000.
Thank you. Any questions on the bills and claims this evening? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented.
So moved. Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Financial report, Mr. Lundberg.
Okay, the cash report for the month of April, excuse me, it showed $9,947,000 coming into the month, $4.5 million of receipts, and $4,851,000 of disbursements, left $9.6 million in total cash at the end of April. $7.3 million was in the general fund, $1.7 million in the capital outlay fund, $378,000 in the special education fund, $124,000 in the bond redemption fund, and $63,200 in the enterprise fund. Comparison to last year, year-to-date at the same time, April 2022, we had $12,975,000 of cash, which makes sense because we had a large buildup in the capital outlay fund to fund a high school addition project of, we had $4.7 million there as opposed to $1.7 this year. So right in line. The receipts of $4.5 million are itemized. I did note, I don't know if I've noted this in the past, and what we receive from the state of South Dakota each month in state aid totals $1.9 million a month that we receive in state aid, general and special education fund. Investment report of $2,020,000. Payroll report showed payroll in the month of April of $2,586,000. In the financial statements through April, 83.3% of the fiscal year complete. On the revenue side of things, I just had a note in here, the statements become very meaningful this time of year. You start being able to calculate percentages and go in line. The only one that's really unknown right now in the revenue side of things would be the utility tax. Third one down, 750,000. It's other revenue that just really isn't, it's hard to project, I should say. Percentage-wise, we're doing well in all the funds. I don't see any problems on the revenue side. Expenditure side, general fund shows 82.3% expended as opposed to 83.1% at the same time last year. That's 3/4 of a percentage point less than it was last year, which is the number that we've been talking about all along here the last 4 or 5 months, of 3/4 to 1% on the expenditure side, which would be around the area of $300,000 of under expenditure in the general fund. Capital outlay fund, 73% expended year to date. Majority of that being less than it was last year is because of the high school addition project. 6.4 million expended prior to tonight's payment, 9.3 total budget. There'll be some things on that project that won't be paid for by the June 30th, so they'll carry over into next year. Special ed, bond redemption fund, nothing to note there. Food service department showed a net loss of $108,000 through April. We've been running that each month here. It'll end up the year $100,000 to $150,000 loss in that fund, as opposed to $260,000 loss budgeted. Lastly, the trust and agency fund, $242,000 amounts held for others. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions on the financial report tonight at all? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the financial report as presented.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That takes us, thank you again, Mr. Lundberg.
Thank you.
Takes us to our general business items. Looks like first thing we have, administration reports, Administrative Center, Superintendent Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple items to update the board on here this evening. Continue to monitor the Navigator CO2 pipeline situation. Professional awards, just want to thank all of those that made our annual employee recognition banquet a success, and also want to congratulate Aaron Reef, our teacher of the year. So thank you to Jennifer Swenson and Stacy Bruce and Bill Miller and all those that made the event a success, and also congratulations to Aaron Reef, our teacher of the year. Budget process, we're really winding down the budget creation process. Here this evening, you'll receive a preliminary budget presentation, and then we will look to adopt the budget following our budget hearing in July. Next year's academic calendar, again, just want to restate that our first day for students is August 23rd. Our first day for kindergarteners is that Friday, August 25th, and our first day for our early childhood kiddos for the 23-24 school year is Monday, August 28th. Continue to work through some high-level preliminary planning for our East Side Elementary School construction project. That is slated to be bid in November or December of '23, and then construction will begin in the spring of '24. Under construction the entirety of the 24-25 school year, open in the fall of '25. Would note that hopeful to have a Buildings and Grounds Board level committee meeting next week, Thursday, at approximately 4:30. So we'll try to coordinate that with our operations manager. We'll get a look at the preliminary plans, and then once we start to work through that, we'll begin to incorporate administration, staff, et cetera, into that respective process. In terms of this academic school year, graduation ceremony is scheduled for this Sunday, May 14th, at 2 p.m. Would ask the Board of Education members to arrive at approximately 1:45. We'll meet in the north end of the Commons. June 1st is our last day for students. Moving into a high school addition update, just want to provide you guys with a couple of additional dates or additional details. We're going to walk through and ultimately punch out the project in phases. Area A, we're going to conduct our walkthrough and develop the punch list on May 16th. Area B, we will walk through and develop the punch list on May 30th. And Area C, we will have our walkthrough and develop the punch list for June 27th. So ultimately, what it's looking like is those respective areas. After the walkthrough, the punch list of the small items are created, punch list is completed. It appears to me as though we're looking at any uncompleted or non-completed punch list items, as well as any warranty work that we may have in the month of July. Would note that furniture delivery and installation is scheduled for mid-July. So those are most certainly important dates to note. And then August 15th is our completion date for our chemistry lab, and then our restrooms that are being remodeled inside of the school. So those respective items are scheduled out to be done then. Overall, we're all good. Want to provide you with a couple of images. This is an Area A exterior. You can see the site work is in progress. They've really started to rough grade that out. I think you'll start to see sidewalks and those various types of things in terms of site work occur here over the course of the next few weeks. Area B, again, exterior site work is in progress. Landscaping, yep. Area C, window installation was in progress when the photo was taken. I would tell you it's done now, so if you drive by on the east side of Area C, they have all of the respective windows in. Again, another shot of Area C, there are windows in it to date. So Area A, this is a look at an interior classroom, or an Area A classroom. Interior finish work is ongoing, so carpet went in earlier this week. Now it's a matter of them finalizing their various things here over the course of the next few weeks. We'll do that walkthrough through Area A, like I said, on May 16th to develop our punch list. Again, Area A finish work. I believe this might be a little conference room in Area A. So again, those respective things are ongoing. Interior site work is ongoing. The finishes are ongoing. I do believe our staff installs the tech in those rooms. Correct, Mr. Lundberg? During the summertime, like they'll come in and install the tech boards and all of that respective stuff. So Area A continues to progress. Area A restrooms, you can see that fixtures are being installed and those respective finishes are going in. Area A conference room. Again, another Area A classroom. That's carpet. Another shot of it. Area B, finish work continues. They're dropping in items overhead, and then they also have carpet installation, etc., to go in, base, etc. Again, looking to punch those out on in the end of May, or walk through Area B in the end of May. This is Area C, the classroom space. So right now, they're in the process of doing all the rough-ins for electrical, and then they'll start to insulate, sheetrock, all of those respective items. A large ticket item I was going to show you. It's not the greatest picture in the world, but our north end, the storefront for the north end, couldn't be installed or can't be installed until they bring all of the structural steel in for the stairways. So the structural steel for Area C for the stairways has gone in. That went in at the end of last week. Madam Chair, that's all I have for you here this evening. Would certainly entertain any questions that you have.
I don't think we have any tonight. Thank you, Superintendent Larson. Mr. Lundberg, anything additional? All right, thank you. High school, Mr. Schleckaway?
I'll be fast. I know Dr. Larson alluded to it earlier, but give you a little bit of information on Sunday. Yes, we'd like you there about 1:45, but do understand, I've learned this from a previous year, that you will be parking a little ways away. So give yourself a little bit of walk time. About 310 graduates that'll be participating in the ceremony. Once again, if you have a graduate that you have a personal connection with and you would like to give them the diploma, we embrace that. We like that. You could certainly give me a list of some names that you know for sure. I'll divide you guys up equally to give those diplomas. There is no studying necessary. You will be fine. But other than that, if you have a student that you know really well or a family friend, you can just step up and give that diploma. I know that family would appreciate it. So looking forward to Sunday. Wednesday, we have our senior academic assembly. I'm going to celebrate all that this class has done, which is numerous. We have concerts tonight, concerts on Thursday, so it's a busy week here at the high school. And just looking forward to Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you. Middle school, Dr. Nelson, anything tonight? All right. Intermediate school, nope. Special services, Mrs. Otime, anything tonight? Elementary, anybody? Nope. Mrs. Nelson, anything? Mr. Henschel, Mr. Frecking, anything tonight? Okay. No board policy, so that takes us to our first item under general business, the Brandon Valley School District 2023-24 preliminary budget presentation. There will be no action on this.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present the preliminary budget. The proposed FY24 budget is approximately $61.9 million. A planned and responsible deficit is being utilized in the general fund as a strategy to effectively manage our fund balance. This planned deficit is important as we work to create learning environments that result in student success while providing the very best work environment possible for our staff. Additionally, a planned deficit exists within our food service fund, which is required in accordance with federal rule and outlined in our previously approved spend down plan. Our projected fund balances within the FY24 budget remain right at or above the 15% fund balance threshold as clearly outlined within our strategic plan. I think the special ed reserve is like 14.9 and change, and within this budget you can see it's going to tick up. There's a little help with that. And then I would say before turning the preliminary budget over to Mr. Lundberg, I would like to publicly thank our administration and also specifically thank the business office, including Mr. Lundberg, Jim Schobert, Mary Miller, and Stacy Bruce for all of their diligent work in the development of the budget. Paul's team and their countless hours of work directly result in an accurate, aggressive, and fiscally responsible budget for the 23-24 school year. So with that, Mr. Lundberg.
Good, thank you, Jared. The overall numbers are in the first slide there. General fund revenues, 39.5 million projected. Expenditures, 40,077,000. Shows a budgeted plan deficit of 536,000. It's, as Jared said, it amounts to what we like to term as a responsible number, that it's not tanking the district or anything, but when people pay taxes, they don't want me to put it in the old adage, they don't want me to stick in the bank at 0.1%. They wanted to see results with their taxes, and I believe this is what that shows. Capital outlay fund, $8.9 million of revenue, $5.2 million of expenditures, $3.6 million surplus. It's the rebuilding year for for the capital outlay fund after we've depleted it this year with the high school addition project. Special education, $9.5 million of revenue and $9,436,000 of expenditures, shows a slight surplus of $86,000. That'll be gone away generally. The only thing I get an email from our Director Othheim on that is more expenditures coming in. So, you know, obviously it's a variable in special ed that we can't pinpoint it. Bond redemption, $3.2 million in revenue and expenses. And as George said, child nutrition, $3.7 million in revenue and $3.9 million in expenditures, $185,000 deficit. The general fund state aid formula, I'd like to take the board through this in a little bit of detail. It's what everything is funded on. It's where we basically get our money. The state of South Dakota they use this as the driving number, the instructional staff salary of $59,659. That's what they drive this formula on, although it's could be debated what the driver is, this number of students up here at the top. If that goes from 5,147 to 5,148, your total state aid or total need goes up to $7,130. It's an expenditure or a student-driven formula. It's just how they choose to code it. We're projecting 5,147 students next year. It's a growth of 165 kids. The state of South Dakota puts our student to teacher ratio at 15-1. So they say we should have 343 staff members. We get a little bit of adjustment for ELL kids, English, limited English proficiency. So it gives us a total of 343.5 FTEs that they say we should have, times the average teacher salary that they project or that they require us to have, and then they put a benefit line item of 29% onto that, so that amounts to another 17,000. I would recognize that Brandon Valley, that 29% is upwards of 35% at Brandon Valley. And it was, as I was conducting that, it seemed like something that maybe legislatively we could attack that area as kind of a in the bushes type area, but it would help us on our funding too. And I don't know how the rest of the state, but it just goes to show our benefit level is very lucrative. Total salary and benefits, $76,960 times the 343 FTEs that we had determined up above gives a total need of $26.4 million, and then the state calculates an overhead cost of 38.78% of the salary and benefits for another $10 million. So the total need at Brandon Valley School District as projected by the state of South Dakota would be $36.7 million. Local effort is what we can generate in taxes based on the state of South Dakota set mill levies. Those are all set by the state. So we can generate $11.6 million in local revenue. And then the last thing is the other revenue equalization. That a few years ago that they took those other revenues and incorporated them into the state funding formula. So that comes out of there. So we'll have $23.3 million of projected 23-24 state aid. Staying on the general fund, $25 million is in the instructional budget, 62.5%. 35% in the support services, $13.8 million. $1 million in activities, 2.5%. And then our early retirement number, which is down this year, less than half of 1%. We didn't have any early retirees that fell into their window this year, so this $165,000 is just paying on the second half of existing retirees, which obviously helped our budget for the current year. 23-24 enrollment projections. You can see the elementary, middle school, and high school. We projected the elementary to go up about 120 kids. Middle school is status quo, and the high school is up, projected of about 50 kids. So a total of 165 kids we're projecting going up. That's 3.3%, which based on a lot of years of history, it should be a fairly conservative number. I think our history shows 4+% over 25 years. That's the driver of our funding right there. The general fund expenditures for 23-24, the exact expenditures, went up 1.7 million in instructional, 1.1 million in support services, down 145,000 in early retirement, and up 65,000 in co-curricular. Total budget is up 2,767,000, 7.4%. That 2,767,000 is broken down in generalized terms below. Good majority of it, salary increases amounted to 2 million, benefit increases another 230,000. Reduction of ESSER funds, 910,000. And we've talked about that before. This is what it seems to be termed or labeled as the fiscal cliff of ESSER funds, and a lot of school districts are become accustomed to that federal money coming in and maybe didn't plan quite as well as South Dakota schools, or in particular Brandon Valley, of getting out of that where it's not there anymore. So that's a big thing, that we did not fall off that cliff. Additional staff of 1.2 million. It's 14 new teachers total and 4 new classified staff. Of all those, 7 of those 14 new teachers are replacing these teachers that were employed under ESSER funds above. So we chose those ones that we thought were the biggest bang for the buck and incorporated them into the next year's budget, therefore avoiding that cliff. 7 new teachers were in ESSER funds, and then 2 classified staff were ESSER funds too. So 18 total new staff, half of which 9 are the replacement from the federal funds above. The next line item, retired staff savings, that's staff that are leaving, that are at a higher salary and replaced with a lower salary teacher. These next couple items, property insurance, utilities, and supplies and materials, the increase in all those can just directly be attributed to inflation. Obviously, we haven't had that in the last few years with very, very low inflation. We've had increases in those, but these are just strictly attributable to inflation. And then, as we talked about earlier, there was a reduction in the early retirement payments of $145,000 at a net increase in the general fund of $2,767,000. Any questions on that? So this is one of the, I don't want to say first year, but this is a first year where we've had a large impact due to inflation. I just really saw it in the cost of supplies and materials, utilities, insurance, all that stuff. Number of certified employees, 333 projected for next year, 5,147 kids. That's a student, a ratio of 15.5 FTEs. And this ratio up here at 91-92 is 16.9 FTEs per ADM. So throughout all those years, it's, what is that, a difference of 1 FTE lower we are today than we were 25, 30 years ago, whatever that is, almost 30 years. That's why I keep that chart to watch that ratio. Next slide is the per pupil allocations that we talked about earlier. You can see the trajectory. This year, that per pupil expenditure level being funded is $7,130. You can kind of see the last few years. We've been very fortunate with our state government offering us increases in the last few years. These are the percentage increases. Over the last few years, 7.1% this year, 6% last year, and we had a few years of 2% in there. that were preceded by that large jump that we took when the governor initiated the $7,500 per teacher salary increase. Average of 4.3% percentage-wise increase over that time period, the whole time period. The next slide is what we've seen before, the Ed Stats Digest per pupil costs throughout the state and throughout the larger schools. You can see the state of South Dakota average cost is $10,500. Brandon Valley is at $9,120. A difference of $1,400 per student. ESD average is $9,200 versus $9,100 at Brandon Valley, so it's $100 difference per student. When you take those numbers times 5,000, it becomes a big number. General fund balance history, Jared alluded to this, I spend a lot of time on this, just trying to, and it's probably one of the hardest things to maintain, the fund balance, maintain an acceptable level of fund balance while still being responsible with the dollars. And we're projected in 23-24 to be at 7.3 million. At the end of this year, I'm projecting 7.6 million. At the end of fiscal year 22 was 8.1 million. So I got it going down these next couple of years, right at 20% on the bottom screen, you can see. And you can see with the percentages, it's varied a little bit, but it's always hung around, you flatten that out, it's always hung around the 20%. Questions? The revenue in the general fund, $39.5 million. Purpose of this chart just show where the revenue is coming from. State sources, 62%, local taxes, 31%. Federal money, less than 1%. Other local sources are interest income, gate receipts, parking passes, that type of income. And then we transfer $1,100,000 out of the capital outlay fund into the general fund. That amounts to 2.8%. Obviously, that dropped considerably this last year with no ESSER fund. And this is the history of the other revenues that we talked about. The key to the other revenues right now is, as it's incorporated into the general fund formula, is to try to get consistent numbers throughout there. It's the ebb and flow of those numbers that can affect us. I mean, we'll always get our money, but it can really affect us from year to year if something drops or goes way up. So we like to see a little consistency in those numbers, which we're showing about $750,000 in the gross receipts and right around $1 million in the bank franchise tax. Some consistency the last 3 or 4 years, so that's good. Capital outlay fund, total expenditures of $5,262,000 next year. Like I said, it's a year of replenishment. I think $9.8 million of revenue, so it will build back up the fund balance in the capital outlay fund for the next couple of years. The total expenditures and the amount and the percentages are listed there. Technology, 29%, $1.5 million. $1,245,000 of facility improvements, and then the operating transfer of $1.1 million. Those 3 items alone amount to 75% of the total capital outlay budget. Debt service is $510,000, just under 10%. It's a number we'll talk about later that is key for right now and for the future. The next slide is the debt service, $510,000. We have a small balance in the building of our intermediate school, which is, we're paying right now about $500,000 of principal and interest each year, be paid off in 2033. Overall, that's very little debt in the capital outlay fund, and what that's allowed us to do, as we've talked about, is to incur debt for our new school that we have projected coming on. That's a really big deal because the levy cannot be raised in the capital outlay fund, so it's operating under the existing levy. It's in addition to paying cash for the high school addition of $10 million. Special education budget totals 9.4 million as opposed to 8.8 million last year, increase of 638,000, 7.25%. Right in line with this, with the general fund, about the same number of percentage increase. The revenues in special education, where they come from, local is 54%, state is 36%, and federal is only 10%. The bond redemption fund, last major fund in the school district, $3,235,000 of expenditures. That's three bond issues that we have outstanding. The intermediate school of 3.8 million will be the balance at the end of next year. That'll be paid off in 33. Inspiration, we have just under $1 million payment each year. That'll be paid off in 2039. And then Fred Assam in the high school edition has a payment of 1.8 million a year, a balance of 6.3 million at the end of next year. That'll be paid off in 2027. As you heard me say, that's key in the fact that it's 2023 right now, so that's 4 years, 3.5 years from now. I'm suspecting in 3.5 years from now, you'll be wanting to build another school, so you would incorporate a bond issue into the fact that you could just roll this one over. Property valuations for 23-24, I have going up just under 8%. The last few years have been pretty wild, to say the least, so I think it's going to calm down here, and I truly believe this will be a true growth number as opposed to an increase in valuation. Last year, 22-23 valuations went up 19% across the board. 11% the year before that. So they've gone up considerably. I mean, I don't control that. I want that very clear. I don't control that. It's just the way it is. And the markets have been crazy. We all know that the real estate market has been nuts over here lately. This next slide lists all the valuations throughout the last 25 years, just under $500 million, $500 million in 1999-2000 school year. Projected next year to be $3,245 million. Obviously, it's all good. Growth is good. You can see the percentages in each year on that chart below there, although small print in the last 5 years. 19, 6.5, 11, 8, 10. So we've had considerable increases in our valuations. The last slide is the projected mill levies. Once again, the general fund, ag, owner-occupied, commercial, special education, and capital outlay fund are all set by the state. We have no say in these levies. The only real levy that we have a say in is the bond redemption fund, and that's going to be down to $1. All those three bond issues are going to be less than $1 to pay off the debt of those. Total ag levy for next year will be $640 as opposed to $660 this year. $804 for owner occupied as opposed to $829. Commercial is $1121 versus $1157. Those are all down about 3.1%, I believe it is. The actual levy is down about 3.1%. There you have it. I think the summary of it, of the budget for 23-24, substantial increases in state aid this year, 7.1%. That's a ginormous increase in state aid, which we have to be very thankful for. I think we are, and appreciative of that. It's allowed us to do some things. The other big thing in the budget is that what we did with that is salary increases of 8%. And then the last thing I had noted as a keynote in the 23-24 budget is avoiding the fiscal cliff of ESSER funds. We did not fall off that cliff. Questions? It's very, very close to projections that we put together 6 months ago. It's always nice when a plan comes together to a projection that far out, so I'm very pleased with it.
Inflation numbers, are you using? The inflation numbers we talked about with the 6 months ago, are you still seeing those? Are you seeing those slow down at all, or the inflation forecast for supplies?
On the supplies,
The inflation forecast for other expenses, like supplies and
oh,
utilities, property insurance.
yeah, you mean the inflation rate that
Yeah.
is 8, 9, 10% I was seeing across the board. I mean, it's just, the problem is that we maintain the same, or when it went up at 220,000, but that 220,000 isn't buying next year what it bought today. That's so, tried to maintain the even keel on that, but it's just really staying even at best. So this thing, it's something that we need to watch, because we need to keep up with those things on our supply purchases and material purchases. Yep. Any other questions? Is that my phone going off? Oh.
All right.
Good.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Appreciate
Always-
the board's support on all of this stuff.
I always appreciate this packet because it's a lot of information and it's all right here if there's anybody has any questions on it in the public, so. All right, thank you. Takes us to item number 2, the public hearing and approval of the application for a waiver from an administrative rule to offer geometry for high school credit before grade 9.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as outlined by the Department of Education, there is a process that we must go through when requesting a waiver for administrative rule. Tonight, what you have is you have a public hearing and then ultimately approval for the waiver application for us to make possible the ability for a middle school student to take geometry for high school credit before grade 9. It's not a situation that occurs frequently, but it is a situation that we do like to have the flexibility and the option to in the event that it's necessary. Would also note that we carry a waiver from administrative rule on this same item for kids to get credit before high school, before grade 9, for algebra as well. So just an item to note, would certainly open the floor for the public hearing, and then we do need action on this following the hearing.
All right. Do we have any public who wants to speak about this? Doesn't seem so. Any questions from anybody else? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the application for a waiver from an administrative rule to offer geometry for high school credit before grade 9.
So moved. Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. I would entertain a motion under general business to approve items 3 through 11 as presented, please.
So moved.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve items 1 through 18 under personnel. There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Communication, under central office, there's some building permit applications from this month or from April that if you would like to look at, you certainly can. There's also Board of Education, a thank you note for the employee recognition banquet and the Sunshine Foods gift card. Board reports, does anyone have a formal board report that they would like to give tonight?
Mine is just real quick, just to remind everybody that the CSDSD 2023 award nominations are now active and open. You can find those on the ASBSD website. Also, you can contact any of us as your board members, as well as Dr. Larson, as we all do have access to them directly. They are due June 30th. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Under travel reports, there are some reports there for your review. Otherwise, that takes us to the end of our scheduled meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone, for coming.